I think one of the reasons tracking metrics is so hard is because if you don't feel like you're in control of the metric, the last thing you want is the reminder that you don't know what you're doing. And I can understand that. I think that's why a lot of people struggle to do the bank account thing.
So the trend line is what matters. Life is up and down and up and down and up and down on the day-to-day. And it feels like crap on the day-to-day, I'm convinced. But the trend line can be in the right direction. And as long as the trend line is in the right direction, you're in good shape.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode number 1724. It was a heavy one, growing up without one of your parents. Shout out to anyone who has/is currently experiencing that. Today, for episode number 1725, an important step for success. And success will be in quotes because success is subjective. I have started asking this question of podcasters, Alan. What are you measuring? I'll say, what are you measuring? And they'll say, what do you mean? And I say, just in terms of like, what are you looking at? Are you looking at your social media following and likes? Are you looking at your listens? Are you looking at what are you ultimately looking at? And people say, well, I'm looking at a lot of things, or often, and again, I completely understand, I'm not looking at anything at all. Okay, well, let's fix that. Alan would not like that very much. Alan likes tracking things. Mm-hmm. My belief is the three most important things to measure are these three things, and I'll give it to them. And my ultimate goal with giving those things to them is I want you to feel like you are capable of being more successful. So one important thing for any level of success is to understand what are you measuring, why are you measuring it, and I guess how to effectively measure it. So we're going to talk about a little bit about that today. One of the reasons I think this is important is because we're doing the NLU 10-pound in 10-week challenge. And shout out to everybody. Everybody is crushing it, and we have a WhatsApp group. Alan and Amy are running this way more than I. This was Alan's idea, I believe, right? This was your idea?
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure I give credit where due. And
I think it is. I think it was. Yeah,
I know
honestly
it wasn't
don't
mine
know anymore.
I know it wasn't mine. So it's
well, the
it's
10
either...
pound in 10 weeks was your idea, but the doing it with the community, I think we mentioned it on the show, and then the WhatsApp group was Amy and I.
Okay, well, shout out to you. I was going to just suffer in silence by myself, me and you, and then you opened it up to the community through Next Level Nation and the podcast, and a lot of people were in. So awesome. One of the things I'm learning, and I put in there today, I put in the WhatsApp chat, I said, I think it's very important for us all to understand that these day-to-day fluctuations are really, really, they don't matter as much as you think they do. So anybody in there who's maybe tracking their weight and trying to lose a specific amount of weight in a specific amount of time, maybe this is the first time you're looking at your weight every day. And you're seeing, like, how did I gain a pound overnight? You didn't. You didn't gain a pound overnight. Just like you didn't lose a pound overnight. And I said today, it's more important to look at the 7-day, the 14-day, the 21-day trends than it is what happened today and what happened tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a really good example of, well, if you're measuring, if in the first week, so if you're out there and you want to have some sort of weight loss journey, in the first week, the numbers are all over the place. And if that's what you're measuring and you're saying, well, I've done this for a week and nothing happened, you're going to end up giving up. In reality, that's kind of how it works for everyone. I think I lost 4 pounds in the first week. I didn't lose 4 pounds in the first week. A lot of that was water weight. Yeah, a lot of that was probably just food weight because I went from eating a lot to eating less, right? It can have there's a lot of different things that can go into that. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do an episode on the importance of what you measure, because you could be successful. Okay, let's do this. How many days have you in the past weighed yourself for? If you've only weighed yourself for 3 days and then you gave up, if you're on day 7, you're already, quote unquote, more successful than you might think you are, because you're instilling a potential new habit. So the measurement, what you're measuring is super, super important.
Well, I love this episode. I adore the very first part of the iceberg under the results is metrics. So I'm obsessed with metrics, obsessed with numbers. I love it. But when the metric becomes the goal, that's the issue. Because what's a good example of this? I was on with a new client. I have a new client who considers herself a gamer. I'm probably going to butcher the name of this game, Guild Wars or something like that. I don't know if you know.
I'm not the guy. I don't know anything.
So I said, have you ever been a gamer? Like, did you game back in the day? Because this person's kind of techie. Calls herself a techie. And I was like, perfect. And she's like, I am a gamer. Not was I a gamer. I am a gamer. I'm like, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. This is going to land. Now, for the listeners, it might not land. Bear with me. Way back in the day, I played a game called Call of Duty Ghosts. You remember Call of Duty Ghosts?
Yes.
Okay. It was an awesome game.
Yeah,
I
all
loved
of
that game. That
Big
was
fan of all of
the
them.
new ones with the jetpacks and all that, man. I can't do it. It's not for me.
Well, it's
But-
not like that anymore.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I've been out of the game for a while.
It's probably a good thing.
Metaphorically and literally. So back in Call of Duty Ghosts days for the Xbox 360, I think. Yeah, Xbox 360. I was really good at the game, and I had a kill to death ratio of a 3.4. And I had over 70,000 kills in team deathmatch. I remember at one point I was top 1,000 on the charts. And I was a weekend warrior. I didn't do this daily. It was on the weekends. And sometimes during work hours, which, I'm not super proud of. But I was in sales, so you get, as long as you're hitting your numbers, you're good type of thing. Anyways, used to play with my buddies, all that. I wanted to keep my kill to death ratio. So essentially what that meant is I need 4 kills for every 1 time I die. And in Call of Duty, in team deathmatch, you die all the time. I mean, it's just... And so the analogy that I use, again, bear with me if you've never played. A lot of people will run around knifing people and or playing with new guns. I kind of had to get... I remember I got to a point where I had to really crush it. If I die 10 times in a row, I have to get 40 kills without dying just to break even.
Right.
Technically 34, 3.4. So 34 kills. If I die. So if I have a death streak of 10 in a row, how many times does that happen to you? You just keep running out and dying?
Well, I mean, pretty much every time, yeah.
Yeah, especially when the other team is crushing you and they have helicopters
every time
and all
for
kinds
me,
of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it was really hard to sustain. My point of this whole thing on this coaching call with this client is I asked her, I said, you play Guild Wars. What are you measuring? And she said number of special items or unique items. Again, I'm butchering this. If you're listening, I'm sorry to the client. And then such and such, number of quests or something like that. I said, okay, what you measure changes the way you play the game. If I was measuring most kills and I was going for most kills, I wouldn't care how much I died. But I had to play with a sniper rifle, and I had to be very strategic with where I place myself, and I had to play very carefully not to die. I was optimizing not to die. I wasn't necessarily optimizing for most kills. If I wanted most kills, I might run out there with a machine gun and just start hammering. And so my whole point of this whole thing, rather than some video game rant, is what you measure in life does determine how you play the game. And a lot of people don't like it when you refer to life as a game, but it is. It is. Podcasting is a game. I mean, it's the same idea. How do you know you're good at Call of Duty? How do you know you're good at Guild Wars? How do you know you're good at basketball? How do you know if you're good at business? How do you know if you're good at podcasting? There's certain stats that basketball players track. Shooting percentage, rebounds, assists, scoreboard, right? Everything in life has metrics. And so whether it's Guild Wars or Call of Duty or podcasting or whatever it is that you do in the world out there listening or watching this, what you track changes the way you play the game so much that you have to be so careful with what you track. One of the reasons people don't like to track their weight is because it makes them so scarce.
Yeah.
The problem is, if you don't track your weight, what are you going to track? Are you going to track the mirror? Because that's very subjective. Are you going to track your body fat percentage? Because those are usually inaccurate numbers unless you're getting an actual DEXA scan. I mean, the problem with life is that we track these things, these metrics, and you should and you need to if you want to make meaningful progress. Any professional athlete out there tracks all their stats. Every business tracks their metrics. Before you invest in a company, you have to see the profit and loss statement. And so tracking is so important. Metrics are so important. There's a great book called Measure What Matters, and there's these things called OKR, Objectives and Key Results. The objective is different than the metric, though. The objective of this podcast is to help people with self-improvement. Tracking the listens helps us understand how well we're doing at that. But it's not directly correlated.
No.
Just because we have a bad week in listens, bad week in quotes, doesn't mean that we're not adding value.
Or just because you have a massive episode doesn't mean it's not because you had a really big guest. The most listened to episodes aren't necessarily the most valuable ones. And the least listened to episodes aren't necessarily the least valuable ones either.
Yep. So if you're doing a marathon or a triathlon, there's these mile markers. And they help you understand where you're at in the journey. The problem is the metrics that we create in life are mile markers, but if we misinterpret that data, we end up demoralized and it ends up derailing us. And a lot of times, instead of a mile marker, we think that's the goal. It becomes the goal. What's a good example of this? I need a better example. 10 pounds in 10 weeks it's the goal, but what's the goal underneath that goal? To be more fit, to be more healthy, to lower our body fat percentage. We're not losing 10 pounds just to say we lost 10 pounds. We're losing 10 pounds because that's on the way to a greater life. It's on the way to greater wellness. That's why I said when I posted in Next Level Nation about the 10-pound, 10-week challenge, that's why I said, beware of your mental health. If your mental health's in a bad spot, don't do this. And some people said, listen, I'm not going to do that. I don't have 10 pounds to lose. If anything, I need to build muscle. One of our community members said, I can't help you. I got to build muscle. I'm already too thin, in my opinion. So I'm in a reverse diet. It wouldn't make any sense for her to track her weight loss when she actually needs to be gaining weight. That's the only reason Brandon's not doing it too, because Brandon already lost 10 pounds because he hasn't been feeling well, and he's trying to build muscle and gain weight. So the metric needs to be there, but it can't be overly focused on to the point where it's demoralizing, but it also can't be ignored to the point where you have no mile marker at all and you get lost. And it can't become the actual goal itself. It has to be a means to an ultimate purpose that's bigger than the weight.
Next Level Nation, what is happening? If you've thought to yourself, I want to try coaching, but you don't really know where to start, group coaching would be a wonderful place for you. That's really why we created it in the first place. We start a new round every 90 days. So if you're hearing this, go to the website, nextleveluniverse.com, and we have the landing page where you can actually hold your spot right now. Even if there's a group going on right now, you can still lock your spot for the next one. The biggest thing that we've seen is as we get closer and closer to the date, unfortunately, some people end up missing. The group fills up and they can't do it, and then they end up regretting that. So please head over to the website. The link will be in the show notes, and we would love to see you there. When I flew back we flew from Scotland to London and then London to Boston. When we flew back, I was measuring the metrics too much. I'd look every 30 minutes, like how far from home are we? Yeah. How many minutes are we from the airport? And that's kind of like when you clock in for an 8-hour day and you look at the clock 15 minutes after you get there and you say, oh my goodness, it's only been 15 minutes. I think the same thing can happen if you're checking your weight 6 times a day. Mm-hmm. Because don't do that. That is a recipe for making yourself feel really bad. I just ate a little while ago. I guarantee I probably ate 2 pounds of food. So if I get on the scale, I'm going to be 2 pounds heavier than I was this morning. And all the liquid I drank, right? And the sodium and the water I'm holding on to, all of that stuff. And when's the last time you used the bathroom? So to your point, if you obsess over it, and I'll use obsess lightly, but number one, understanding what your relationship with the metrics is, I think that's super important. And then rebuilding your relationship with that. But yeah, you can over measure and you can under measure. Both of those, I think, are really, really disheartening because let's say you're doing something. I guess a good example of that could be, I guess it wouldn't be disheartening in this scenario, but if we're flying for 8 hours and then I look at the time before landing, 15 minutes before we land, I'm going to be super happy. That's not necessarily a good example.
What is the optimal amount of checking in? Probably every couple hours. For an 8-hour flight, you should check in every hour.
Whatever's productive. I think it depends on the person.
Yep.
For me, I do it too much. For you, I don't think there is there is a not enough, because shout out to anybody who can sleep on an 8-hour flight for 8 hours. Good for you. You have a superpower. So I don't think there's anything off on that, but it's like if you were rowing a boat and you were trying to get to a certain place, you have to check every so often. Because if you don't check, you might end up somewhere completely different, and it might not be where you want, and it might be more work to get back to where you wanted to in the first place. But I understand why it's hard. I think one of the reasons tracking metrics is so hard is because if you don't feel like you're in control of the metric, the last thing you want is the reminder that you don't know what you're doing. And I can understand that. I think that's why a lot of people struggle to do the bank account thing.
The paradox of that is
100%.
If you don't track it, you won't improve it. I told my new client this yesterday, but I tell all my clients this. I no longer want to coach anyone if you don't want to track metrics. I'm very, very grateful to be in a place where that's the case. And the reason why is, and this is an interesting analogy and metaphor I've never been able to use before. And trigger warning for anyone out there who is frustrated with this happening, but this is happening in the world. We drove through 8 states from Massachusetts to South Carolina, Emilia and I, and the Tesla drove itself. Now, it's called supervisor mode, so I'm still in the driver's seat, and it just drives itself, and I just have to have my hands near the wheel. And every now and then it says, hey, grab the wheel. Okay? But it drives itself. It's awesome. Okay? I think it's awesome, but I'm also an early adopter. I love tech, and I used to program things like this. Not things this intense, but you know what I'm saying. All right. It's the best thing ever. I only had to stop this thing maybe 5 to 7 times, and honestly, I don't know if I really had to. It's just because, just in case. A lot of those were just in case stops. The Tesla genuinely drives itself. It's so cool. That said, what's my point? There's 9 cameras. So there's 3 in the front, 1 facing to the right, 1 to the left, and 1 straight. There's a camera in each driver's side door, and then there's a camera in both rear doors. That's 3 plus 4, so you're looking at 7. Plus there's a camera in the very back, and then there's also one in the actual car that shows the actual car. Now, I was talking to Kev about how measuring things in peak performance tracking, the habit tracking that we do, there's 2 real main measurements. There's most important metric, which is just a cumulative measurement. Weight would be a good example. Another one of my clients tracks the number of days that she's habit tracked. So she's on, 170 days in a row of habit tracking, okay? So one of them is the most important metric. The other one's a habit. So did I drink my water today? 1 means yes. 0.5 means some of it. If my goal was 80 ounces, I only ate 40, it would be 0.5. And then 0 if, no, I just didn't drink water today, which probably doesn't happen, hopefully. Okay. What I told to Kev in this metaphor is PPT, peak performance tracking, and my coaching program. What I want it to be is like a self-driving Tesla. When it's rainy out or there's mud covering one of the cameras, so at each of the superchargers, I have to go and I have to go and clean off each of the cameras because I want to make sure this thing can drive itself because I don't want to drive. Okay. So I would clean off the cameras at each stop, especially if it was rainy or muddy or whatever. And if one of the cameras is not working well, it says camera occluded, self-driving, not possible. It shuts it off. It doesn't let you do it if one of the cameras can't get the data. Because if a truck's coming from the right and it can't see the truck, it can't move accordingly. And so all of us in life, I think that's a great analogy. Imagine you go into a Tesla, trigger warning, you plug in a destination address, which is your goal, and you have a current address, and then you click the bing, and it just rainbow roads, and you just show up. Now, you have to watch, obviously, just in case, because bunnies and birds, it doesn't do a good job, so I had to make sure I saved the bunnies and the birds. But at the end of the day, it needs the data. If the cameras are occluded, it says occluded, which I didn't even know what that meant. We looked it up. It means blocked. Yeah. If one of the cameras blocked, you can't get that data. And so for all of us in life, when we're avoiding the bank account, when we're neglecting the bank account, when we're neglecting our weight, when we're neglecting our body fat percentage, when we're neglecting our check-ins in our relationship, it's basically like the Tesla trying to drive without any cameras. It's just driving into the wall, maybe. And I feel like a lot of us do that in life, and then we end up living in a shitty place, driving what we don't want to drive, doing what we don't want to do, living not our dreams, having a life that kind of sucks, and we don't realize that a lot of that was just neglect. Not always, but a lot of it was neglect. And so what I try to do with all my clients is, how do we get you to measure the right stuff? so that you can focus on the right stuff, so that you can do the right things, so that you can achieve your goals and dreams. And the journey along the way is hard. It's emotional. I lost 4 pounds, then I gained 2, then I lost 1, and now I'm back to 191.8 as of today. But I was 190.6, which was my new low, super pumped, and then I'm right back up to 191.8. What did I do? I definitely was in a deficit yesterday. I'm still hungry. What happened? No idea. Just par for the course. Yeah. So the trend line is what matters. Life is up and down and up and down and up and down on the day-to-day. And it feels like crap on the day-to-day, I'm convinced. But the trend line can be in the right direction. And as long as the trend line is in the right direction, you're in good shape. Just keep it up. And when it's not, over an extended period of time, a couple weeks, that's when you got to make some pivots and go back to the drawing board and say, maybe I am eating too much. Emilia and I just figured out that she's tracking her chicken and her rice wrong. She was doing 8 ounces of chicken when she actually should be tracking. No, she was tracking 4. She should have been tracking 8. And she was tracking dry rice, not cooked. Those are classic mistakes in the early journey. She just started tracking macros this year.
The rice one's always challenging. Mm-hmm. That's like the hardest thing in the world to find. You go down once you find the number once, you have to use that number forever, because when you search it again, the number is going to be different, especially with rice. That's the whole thing. Strong work.
You as well, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Maybe for everyone out there, one thing under health, one thing under wealth, one thing under love. What are your metrics? Get clear on those. And again, don't obsess, but it is a good thing to have because it will help you stay on the rails. Shout out to the amazing NLU community. We hit our fundraising goal in a day or 2 days. Right after we put the GoFundMe up, we got $600 worth of donations. Alan and I already matched the $600 personally. If you are local to the Worcester, Mass area and you are a parent of like a single parent and you have kids and you want to bring them to the event, it's not Saturday. Now it's Sunday on Father's Day. There was a miscommunication with the YMCA. That's the whole thing. But we're going to move forward because that is what we do. So it will be on Father's Day. It is 1 o'clock?
Yes.
1 to
yep. We can
3?
start at
1
1 to it's 3 hours, so 1
to 4.
1 to 4. Yep.
1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Okay. Yeah, so from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, Worcester, Mass. If you're interested, you can DM Alan at nextleveluniverse.com, Kevin at nextleveluniverse.com, because the landing page, the website, there's a bunch going on. The website's
That would
down
be email. Email.
What did I say?
You said DM.
DM through the email machine.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Tomorrow for episode number 1726, it's Freestyle Friday. So we don't know what we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about it, and then we'll title the episode based on what we talk about. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Measure what matters. Next Level Nation.